that case? Any one of you? Hello? Or complete silence? Anyone? Anyone has read up that case? Silence means, what's the silence? Constitute constitute acceptance. Betul.
Salah.
So that means everyone is clear with that case. Betul then.
Everyone is not clear about the case. I think.
Everyone not clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did mention you all to go and read up the case, right? I told you even if you Google, you can get that case. Am I right? It's a case actually. Yeah, this is pertaining to an event management. One event management company hired a lady to do a performance, a dancing and a singing show. Yeah, but when they signed the contract, yeah, the event management company said, okay, you have to complete 6 rehearsals. You have to complete 6 rehearsals before you do the actual performance. You have to undergo 6 rehearsals before you do the actual performance. But this lady is an experienced singer and a dancer, a veteran. So she could not complete all the 6 rehearsals because she fell ill. But she was ready for the actual performance. But during the rehearsal, she could not complete all the 6 rehearsals, but she completed more than half of it. So what the event management company they did, they canceled a contract. She sued them. And when this case went to court, yeah, the judge said here, it is not a breach of condition. If she did not turn up on the day of the actual performance, then it's a breach of condition. But here, rehearsal is not the main term of the contract. And moreover, she being an experienced performer and a dancer, okay, she has completed partial of it. Only thing she did not complete the whole thing because she was ill. But she was ready for the actual performance. So it is only a warranty, not a condition. So therefore, the event management company cannot cancel or repudiate the entire contract. Clear? All right. Now I'll go back to implied terms. Okay, implied terms which are not put in writing. I'll repeat again here. Implied terms which are not put in writing, but but the parties to the agreement, has a common understanding. But the parties to an agreement has a common understanding that such terms exist. That such terms exist. Only thing is not put in writing. So meaning what I'm trying to say is here, that means the parties they knew what are the terms of that particular agreement, but only thing is not put in writing. But both parties knew these are terms which they need to perform, but only thing is not put in writing. Okay, so meaning implied terms which are not put in writing, but the parties to the agreement has a common understanding that such terms exist. It appear, but only thing is not put in writing. Only thing is not put in writing. Only thing is not put in writing. Okay, so here we always refer to an act of parliament. We always refer to an act of parliament for implied terms. Okay, the Act of Parliament, which I'm going to apply for implied terms to explain what is implied terms by using the Sales of Goods Act 1957. The Sales of Goods Act 1957. So I'm going to explain very briefly Section 14, Section 15, Section 16, and Section 17 of the Sales of Goods Act. Here. I did also remind you all the other day that the Sales of Goods Act 1957 only applies for Peninsula Malaysia. It doesn't apply for Sabah and Sarawak. For Sabah and Sarawak, it is governed by the English Sales of Goods Act, the 1979 English Sales of Goods Act. Yeah. Now we'll just focus on the Malaysian one. Yeah. Okay. Section 14. Section 14. Yeah. Very important, yeah. Section 14 refer to the title of the goods. Section 14 refer to the title of the goods. The title of the goods. Some goods you have a title, right? Okay, I did explain in the last class the definition of goods, am I right? Okay, now Shahira Akma. Shahira Akma, can you give me a quickly what is the definition of goods as far as law is concerned? Shahira Akma, are you on the line?
I forgot.
Yeah, tell me.
I forgot.
Okay, okay. If you forgot, then I have to fall back on the class rep. Where's the class rep? Hello, class rep.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
class rep should know more than rest of the students. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
Okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
goods that it's like things that are unmovable, such as like land, property, buildings, those.
Are they goods?
Yeah.
Oh, you can move land from one place to another.
No, it cannot move.
Cannot
It's
move. Okay.
unmovable. There's,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
you are right. Yeah, Shelley, you are right. Yeah, Section 2 of the Sales of Goods Act 1957. The Malaysian Parliament under Section 2, they have given a definition of what is goods. Whatever things which are movable, whatever things which are movable falls as goods. Whatever things which are immovable are not goods. So immovable land, buildings cannot move from one place. But soil in the land, crops in the land can be moved from one place to another, so it falls as goods. Only land is immovable and buildings. Uh, Buildings and houses, some they might argue, hey, houses, there are caravans can move from one place to another. Am I right? Caravans, yeah, can move from one place to another. But we are talking about generally, yeah, houses are fixed things, right, which cannot be moved from one location to another. Which things are movable? Car, lorries, table, chairs, and all the things are right, household furniture and other things are movable. Yeah. Okay. So here, some goods they have title, right? Car, it has a title. Am I right? Okay, now section 14, I told you all, refer to the title of the goods. The title of the goods, yeah. Okay, listen carefully, yeah. Section 14 refer to title of goods. Okay, now let's say I put it two parties, seller and the buyer. Let's say, yeah, the seller wanted to sell his uh, car to the buyer. Okay, the seller wanted to sell his car to the buyer. So here, listen carefully. Yeah, the buyer presume that the seller is the owner of the car. That is the reason he's selling the car. Am I right? It's a common understanding, right? It's a common understanding, right? It's a common understanding, right? Because when the seller wanted to sell something, yeah, the buyer presume that the seller is the owner of that particular goods. That's what he's selling, right? Okay, let's say an example, yeah. Let's say an example. I'm going to sell this mobile phone so to, let's say, to Mr. A. So Mr. A presume that since I'm selling this mobile phone, I am the owner of this particular goods. Am I right? That's the reason I am selling. Am I right? It's a common understanding that when somebody comes to sell something to you, you have a implied understanding he is the owner of the goods, that's why he's selling. Am I right? So if the seller is the owner of the goods, then the goods plus the title can be transferred from the seller to the buyer. The goods plus the title of the goods can be transferred from the seller to the buyer under section 14. But let's say the car I'm going to sell to A. Let's say I'm having a car, I'm going to sell it to A, but the car is still under hire purchase. That means a loan, let's say, with a Malayan bank under the Hire Purchase Act of Malaysia 1967. Okay, let's say my loan agreement with the Maybank is for 5 years. I've serviced the loan for 2 years, still remaining 3 years. Am I right? So now I'm going to sell the car to the buyer. Can I sell the car to the buyer? Cannot. Boleh atau tak boleh? Can anyone help me?
Can.
Can, but yeah, can, provided I could settle the payment to the Maybank, am I right?
Yes.
Because here, am I the owner of the car? Am I the owner of the car? Am I the
No.
owner of the car? I'm not the owner, right? Who am I then? Of course, I'm a human being, but who am I? As far as the goods is concerned, as far as the car is concerned, anyone can help me? Hello? Can anyone help me? Yes, anyone? Janice?
What's your question, sir?
Okay, my question is, yeah, I think you came in late, maybe you couldn't get it, yeah? Okay, let's say I'm having a car. Car
Mm,
counts as goods, am I right? Okay,
yeah.
now uh, the title I'm referring to title of goods here, which comes under section 14 of the Sales of Goods Act 1957, yeah? So now I'm going to sell my car to the buyer, but I have still a loan with the bank. Let's say my loan is for 5 years, but I've already serviced the loan for 2 years, still remaining 3 years. Now I'm planning to sell the car to, let's say, to Mr. X. Can I sell the car?
Yeah, you can sell the car.
Can, provided I settle the payment with the bank. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, now I've not settled the payment with the bank yet. Am I the owner of the car? Am I the owner of the car?
Consider yes.
Consider
Because
yes.
yeah,
But
because we are the one driving the car. What?
so I'm the one using the car. I'm the one who's modifying the car. I'm using the car daily. So you are saying I'm the owner of the car.
Yeah, we just have
Okay.
the loan from the bank.
Okay. All right. Any others has any other opinion here? Any others? Can anyone of you help me?
I think no, you are just using it.
Okay. So you are saying we are the user of the car, not the
You,
owner of the car. Okay.
yeah.
Good. Okay. Any others? Any others? Give me a come. Any others can help me? Any others? Young Van Bin. Young Van Bin, can you help me? Young. Boleh?
I think no, because he
Ah,
haven't paid off he haven't cleared the payment. Once
okay.
he clear the
Right.
payment, the car is him.
Okay. Okay. Right. I do get what you're trying to say. You're saying that I've not serviced the loan yet. I've not completed settling the loan yet. So therefore, I'm not the owner. That's what you're saying, right, Young? Okay. What about Chia? Oh, sorry. T How Jun. T How Jun, Chelsea. You're a Chelsea supporter, yeah? T. Hello, T. Are you on the line?
I think no also because the guy haven't settled the payment yet.
The person has not settled the payment yet, yeah, so therefore not the owner. T, you are Chelsea supporter, T.
Yeah.
Okay. Chelsea and Arsenal are my enemies because I'm a ardent supporter of Manchester United.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now you see, let me explain. Here, I'm merely the registered owner of the car. I'm merely the registered owner of the car. I'm not the legal owner of the car. The legal owner of the car is Maybank. I'm merely the registered owner. Once I become the legal owner of the car, once I become the legal owner of the car, only then I could transfer the car to the buyer and also the title of the car. Then it's a complete transfer. The goods plus the title. But let's say, still I have not serviced the loan without the knowledge of the bank. Let's say I'm selling the car for a quick. Let's say the market value of the car is 100,000. So I'm telling the buyer, you just pay me 50,000. You take the car. I've collected the 50,000. I've given him the car, and I've left the country. I've left the country for good. Now, has the buyer physically the buyer has obtained the car? Am I right? Physically, he has obtained the car. But has the title of the car transferred from me to the buyer? No, because I myself is not the legal owner of the car. The legal owner of the car is my bank. So I can only physically transfer the car, but the title can be transferred. So still the bank is the legal owner of the car. If let's say this gentleman did not service the loan continuously for 2 months and 21 days, then the bank has the right to repossess the car. So here, so why am I going back to, okay, now I'm going back to section 14, yeah? Section 14 of the Sales of Goods Act is referring to title. So section 14 says the seller can only transfer the goods plus the title of the goods provided he is the legal owner. If it's merely the registered owner, he cannot transfer. The car can physically can go to the buyer, but the title can never ever go because the seller himself is not the legal owner. I all get it what the title means under section 14 now? Hello, anyone have any doubt? Hello? Are you all clear or not clear? If anyone not clear, please tell me. I'll repeat again. Who is clear? Okay, Jia, you're not clear. What about the rest?
Not sure.
Not sure. Okay, you are trying to play a very safe game by saying not sure. Any others?
I'm happy if you can repeat again.
Okay, yeah. Okay, now what I'm trying to say is section 14 refer to title of goods, under the Sales of Goods Act. Section 14 refer to title under the Sales of Goods Act, Section 14 is telling the seller can only transfer the goods from the seller to the buyer provided the seller is the legal owner of the goods. If it's merely the registered owner, the goods can be transferred to the buyer, but the title cannot be transferred because the seller himself is not the legal owner of the goods. He don't have the title himself. How can he transfer the title? Because the title belongs to the bank because he has not settled the loan with the bank yet. Are you clear now? So what I'm trying to say is the seller can transfer the goods plus the title provided the seller is the legal owner of the goods. If it's merely the registered owner, only the goods can be transferred, but the title cannot be transferred. Then he can't have the exclusive possession of the goods. Clear now?
Teacher, the thing you say is under Parliament SOGA 1957, right?
Yes, Section 14 of the Sales of Goods Act 1957. Okay, if the, what's your question again? Okay, if you want to become the legal owner, he has to settle the payment with the bank. Once he has settled the payment with the bank, only then he becomes the legal owner of the goods. As far as still under hire purchase, the legal owner of the goods is the bank. So if you want to become the legal owner, you have to settle the payment with the bank. Only then you become the legal owner. Then you can transfer the goods to anyone. The title plus the goods together. As long as you are not the legal owner, you can transfer the goods to the buyer, but the title cannot be transferred because you yourself is not the title owner. You can't give what you don't have, am I right? Clear? Sure? Okay, any others? You have any other doubt? Clear? Okay, that is section 14, Okay, section 15. Section 15 of the Sales of Goods Act is saying, is referring to description of goods. Description of goods. You know what's the description, right? You describe. Okay, so here, section 15 of the Sales of Goods Act refer to the description of the goods. The seller the seller do not have the goods with him. The seller do not have the goods with him, but he is describing to the buyer how the goods is going to look like. He's telling to the buyer the goods is square in shape, it weighs 10 kilograms, it is red in color. So that means, yeah, the buyer has an implied understanding based on the description. The goods is rectangle in shape. It is weigh, let's say 10 kilograms, and it is red in color. And the goods is manufactured in West Germany, let's say. So he has an implied understanding, right? That the goods is square in shape, red in color, the weightage of it is 10 kilograms, and that goods is manufactured in West Germany based on the description, because the buyer has not physically seen the goods, but he is buying the goods based on the description of the buyer.
Teacher, can you
Sorry,
repeat again?
on the description of the seller. Okay, so you
Can you
see
repeat?
now. Okay, now I'll tell you some messages coming. Okay, now I'll use this mobile phone. Yeah, let's say I'm having a iPhone with me, the latest one. Yeah, but let's say it's somewhere else. But now I'm the seller. Yeah, I'm telling the buyer I'm having a phone. Uh, it's an iPhone, latest model, and the price is so much. So that means, yeah, so the buyer has an implied understanding based on the my description that the phone is iPhone, latest model, and whatever color and everything I'm explaining to him. So the buyer has an implied understanding based on my description how the mobile phone is going to look like, what model and all the things. Am I right? The price and everything. So he's buying the goods based on my description. But when I'm delivering the goods is not iPhone. Let's say another brand. Now, can the buyer accept the goods? Cannot.
Cannot. But the buyer need to have evidence which the decision of the seller.
Yes, of course. Okay. Now going back just now, the situation I said the goods is rectangle in shape, red in color, weight is 10 kilograms, and manufactured in West Germany. So that means the buyer has an implied understanding. Okay, the shape of the goods is rectangle in shape, weightage is 10 kilograms, red in color, and this goods is made in West Germany. But based on that, he's buying the goods. The goods has already been delivered. Red in color, 10 kilogram. Listen, yeah, red in color, 10 kilogram, rectangle in shape, but manufactured Bangladesh. But my description says the goods is manufactured in West Germany. Now, can the buyer reject the goods? Can the buyer reject the goods?
Can?
Yes, because section 15, yeah, listen, very important here. Section 15 is saying the description must correspond with the goods. The description must correspond with the goods. If the description did not correspond with the goods, then the buyer has the right to reject the goods. So here, the buyer is buying the goods based on the description by the seller, right? So the description must correspond with the goods. If the description did not correspond with the goods, then the buyer has the right to reject the goods. That is, we are selling goods uh, based on description. Clear? That is what section 15 of the Sales of Goods Act is saying. Are you all clear?
Okay.
Anyone not clear? Semua clear, yeah? So you all know now the difference between section 14 and section 15, right? Now I'll go back to section 16. Hello, please.
So sorry, teacher.
Huh?
Sorry, I need to interrupt you a while. I
Ah.
want to can you repeat the section 40 of the Goods Sales of Good Act 1967 description of goods, section 14 sales of the Good Act. Then what is that?
Okay. First, I was explaining section 14 refer to title of goods, am I right?
Uh,
This description comes under section 15. Description comes under section 15 of the Sales of Goods Act 1957.
okay. The seller do not have the good with him, but what?
No, that is title. That is title. That is section 14.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That is section 14. The first one I explained is section 14. That is title of goods. The title of goods, what I'm trying to say is that the seller must be the legal owner of the goods. Only then he
It's
can
about
physically
different goods.
transfer the goods plus the title. That is
Yeah.
section 14. If
Oh,
it's
okay.
merely the registered owner, if it's merely the registered owner of the goods, he can sell the goods to the buyer, but the title cannot be transferred because he himself, the seller himself, not the legal owner of the goods. You can only transfer the title plus the goods provided you become the legal owner of the goods.
Okay, okay.
Clear, yeah?
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So section 15, everyone clear now? Section 15 on description?
Yeah, clear.
Clear. Okay, now I'll go back to section 16. Okay, going back to section 16, yeah. When the Malaysian Parliament, when initially when they drafted Section 16, yeah, they said the goods must be fit. The goods must be fit. Okay. When I say the goods must be fit, yeah, let's say I'm selling a goods to the buyer. Let's say I'm selling a goods to the buyer. So the goods must be fit for whichever purpose the buyer has purchased the goods. Am I right? The goods must be fit. Am I right? If let's say I've sold the goods to the buyer, it did not fit him. Can he reject the goods? Of course, can, isn't there? So what I'm trying to say here, yeah, the goods must be fit. That's what initially the section 16 of the sales of goods says. Yeah, let's say, yeah, I'm selling a goods to the buyer. Let's say I'm selling a washing machine to the buyer. But the washing machine is working, but it's not spinning. Okay, it does the washing, but when it comes to spinning, it doesn't spin. Now, can the buyer reject the goods? Can or cannot?
Can.
Can reject the goods because the goods did not fit for the purpose for which he purchased it. Am I right? Betul kan?
Yes.
So that means here section 15 section 16 initially says the goods must be fit. But now I'm using one example why the confusion has taken place here. Let me explain. Yeah. Let's say I'm selling a bed. Let's say I'm selling a double bed to the seller. Let's say I'm selling a double bed to the seller. Now, middle of the night, the bed collapsed and the seller is injured. Can the seller reject the goods and demand money from me?
Can, I think, because
Can, of course, can.
the good did not fit to the buyer.
Okay, it's a double bed. Two of them were sleeping. Middle of the night, the bed collapsed. Can they uh, return the goods?
Yes.
Cannot, cannot. Of course, can, isn't there? But let's say now, yeah. Now, let's say I'm telling three of them sleeping in that bed. Three of them sleeping in that bed, and the bed collapsed middle of the night. Can they reject the goods now?
Cannot,
No, cannot.
Cannot. Why?
Because
because
for two people.
Ah, double bed is an implied understanding is only meant for two-person, right? If single bed is indirectly referred to one person, right? If in a single bed, two persons sleeping and middle of the night the bed collapse, then they cannot, am I right? Because of the weightage forward. Yeah. Let's say now, yeah. So that is it must be fit for the purpose for which it's purchased. Here, double bed meant for two person, if a single bed meant for one person, am I right? That is very clear, right? But what happened later part, there was a complication, you know. Now let's say the seller is selling a bed to the buyer. Now, husband and wife. The husband is 300 kg and the wife is also 300 kg. Middle of the night, the bed collapsed and both of them are injured. Can they sue the seller?
Yes.
Can they sue the seller?
Yes.
Hmm? Two of them, husband, wife, double bed. Husband 300 kg, wife 300 kg. Middle of the night, the bed collapsed and they injured. Can they sue the seller now?
But they didn't say cannot for overweight, ma.
So here, as far as the seller is concerned, husband and wife, he sold the bed, am I right? They did not indicate, hey, my husband is 300 kg and my wife is 300 kg. They did not indicate, let's say, they did not indicate, yeah. So it's a general thing. That means both combined together is 600 kg. Am I right? Of course, the bed could not take the weightage. If they would have told, if we're going to buy, my wife is 350 kg, let's say I'm only 100 kg and my wife is 350 kg, both combined 450 kg. Now, if that is the case, yeah, if you would have told, then of course the seller would have said, since your wife is 350 kg and you're 100 kg, I'm seeing you physically, you're 100 kg, both of you are 450. Of course, this standard double bed would not take the weightage. So maybe you all could make a tailored made bed, maybe with a steel frame and all the thing to take the weightage. Am I right? But here, he did not indicate the weightage of the wife. So of course, he can't be blamed. Am I right? He cannot sue. So here, that's why later part the Malaysian Parliament, yeah, they added in one word. Initially, it says the goods must be fit, but later they added in a word, the goods must be fit for the purpose for which it is commonly used. They add in the word, the goods must be fit for the purpose for which it is commonly used. Now, why 350 kg? Is it common? Ada ke why? Just tell ladies 350 kg ada ke? Huh? Or any man 350 kg ada dalam Malaysia? Hello?
Got
Ada 350 kg, no?
350, no lah, I think.
Ada 350. Maybe even the sumo wrestlers in Japan, I don't think so. They have 350 kg. Yeah? Hey, 350 kg is quite heavy, right?
Cannot move already, I think.
Okay, so they add in the word goods must be fit for which it is commonly used. Let's say you're buying a kancil car. Okay, kancil car, how many people can sit? Kereta kancil, how many can sit? The maximum 5, am I right? Betul kan?
Yeah.
But let's say here, 8 of them are sitting crammed into the car, and let's say uh, the bearing and everything collapsed and it fallen apart. Can they sue the seller? Cannot.
Cannot.
Cannot, isn't it? So here, section 16 is saying goods must be fit for the purpose for which it is commonly used. You cannot use it for abnormal purpose. That's what the law is saying. You must only use it for the common purpose for which that goods must be used. You cannot use it for abnormal purpose. If you use it for abnormal purpose and it goes wrong, then you cannot recover for any damages. Dapat? This all implied. Okay, it's an implied understanding when you sell a car, yeah, a maximum only 5 people can sit, maybe 3 in the back and 2 in the front. That's the standard. It's an implied, am I right? If you go and sit 10 of you all and thing collapse, then you cannot. You're using it for abnormal purpose. Betul kan? Okay, that is section 16, yeah. Okay, section 17. Section 17 refer to sale by sample. Sale by sample. SAMPLE. Okay. Now I am showing the buyer a sample. Okay. This is a sample of the goods. This is what you're going to get once the goods is delivered. So the buyer has an implied understanding based on the sample. This is what exactly is going to get, but a brand new one. Am I right? Just this is only a sample, but he knows this is what exactly he's going to get, but a brand new one. But when the goods is delivered, the goods is totally different from the sample. Can the buyer reject the goods?
Yes.
Yes, because the goods must correspond with the sample. And if it did not, then the buyer has the right to reject the goods. Okay, that is the law. Yeah, that's what section 17 says. It must follow the sample. If it's different from the sample, then the buyer has the right to reject the goods. But let's say, yeah, now I'm the seller. I'm showing the sample to the buyer, and the buyer is ordering 50 of that goods. The buyer is ordering 50 of the goods, but I'm delivering. 49 of the goods were similar to the sample, and one were different from the sample. Now, what is the position of the buyer? Do the buyer have the right to reject all the 50 goods, or only the accept the 49 and only reject the one? What's your opinion on this?
Only reject the one.
Okay, so you are saying reject the one. Any others has any other opinion?
Because majority is okay, ma.
So you are saying the 49, it resembles the sample, only one is different, then you have the right to reject. Am I right? That's what you're saying, right? Any other, Shelly? What about you, Shelly?
I think cannot. I think can reject because there's one it's different one.
Reject the one. Okay, what about you, Janice?
Hello.
What is it?
I think the buyer actually have the right to reject all the 50.
Okay, you're saying the buyer has the right to reject all the goods here. What about Jia? Jia, what about you, Jia? The one. Reject the one. Ah, okay. Right. Here, the law says, yeah, it is the option of the buyer. He has the right either to reject only the one, or he has the right to reject all the 50. You know why? Because sometimes the buyer can be a middleman. The buyer is buying the goods to be shipped to a third party, to be sold to a third party. Then, of course, the third party wouldn't accept only the 49, am I right? They want the whole 50 to be together or to be exported overseas, am I right? So, the option is on the buyer, whether he has the right either to reject the only one, or he has the right also to reject all the 50. The option is on the buyer. Clear? Hello?
Clear.
Clear, yeah? So that means yeah, section 14 to section 17 refer to implied terms. Implied terms under the Sales of Goods Act. So it's a common. That's why I did mention, give her an explanation what is implied terms. Right? Implied terms, terms which are not put in writing, but the parties to the agreement has a common understanding that such terms exist. Only thing is not put in writing. Like if I'm selling a double bed, it's a common understanding. Double bed is only meant for two person. Am I right? If I'm selling single bed, it's only meant for one person. It's a common understanding. No need any explanation. But if let's say this now I was telling you the 50 goods here, I'm telling okay, these goods are all manufactured in West Germany. Okay, but when the goods is delivered, let's say 49 of the goods manufactured in West Germany, one from Bangladesh. Can the buyer reject all the 50? Yes, that's right. Because he's going to maybe transfer the goods to a third party. Maybe he's only a middleman. So he has the right to reject all the 50. Dapat? Clear?
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah, yeah. Dapat, dapat.
Okay. Dapat. So now, express terms and implied terms, these are most important. You need to know as far as the exam is concerned. But the third one uh, is not an examinable, but you need to know. I told you all the third one is innominate term or intermediate term. Am I right? Betul kan? The other day I did mention
Yes.
that. Okay. Innominate term means yeah, terms which innominate term or intermediate terms yeah, there is no standard, there's no standard clear indication. There is no standard clear indication. It falls in between express terms and implied terms. It falls in between express terms and implied terms. There is no set of guidelines for innominate term. So you know what's an express term, you know what's an implied term. Whereas innominate term, there is no set of guidelines for innominate term, but it falls in between express terms and implied terms. So meaning to say it goes on a case to case basis decided by the judge. But this innominate term was created in one landmark case called Hong Kong Fur Shipping versus Kawasaki. Hong Kong Fur Shipping versus Kawasaki. So this innominative term was created in this case, So it do not have standard guidelines. It falls in between express terms and implied terms. So the judges will be deciding whether it is express terms, implied terms, or innominative terms. It's for the judges to decide because there is no clear indication whether it is implied terms or express terms. So it's for the judges to interpret which under which category it falls. As long as you know this is more than enough. Okay. Now, last week, as I should have done law of consideration. Am I right? I've not covered on consideration. Am I right? Have I covered on consideration?
No.
Haven't
Ada
yet.
kan? Tadi kan? Okay, I'll go through on consideration now. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any question to ask me before I go to your consideration? Anything on implied terms or express terms? Who and do some?
Is it just now you said that it's a case the Hong Kong for something?
Hong Kong fur shipping, fur FIR, fur shipping versus Kawasaki versus Kawasaki.
Okay, thank
Hong
you.
Kong Hong Kong fur shipping versus Kawasaki. Dapat? Clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have full 14. 14 actually 14 in your total students, right? 14 or
Yes.
15? 15.
14, I think. Last time I counted 14. I don't know. Should be
So
14.
including me is 15 lah. Now, okay, now it's complete. Everyone is present. I could see now. Okay. Now, any question? Tak ada.
No.
Okay. Can I go back into consideration now?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay. Now, offer and acceptance, intention to create legal relationship. I've already explained to you, all right. And now consideration. Yeah, consideration is one of the elements needed for the formation of a valid binding agreement. Very important, yeah. Consideration is one of those elements needed for the formation of a valid binding agreement. Okay, now what is consideration? The definition of consideration comes under section 2, subsection D, section 2, subsection D of Contract Act 1950. Section 2, subsection D of Contract Act 1950 gives you the definition of what is consideration. Okay, consideration means here, now, let's say I use this phone here. I'm selling this. In return, what am I getting? If I sell this, in return, what am I getting? If I sell this, what am I getting in return?
Money.
Money. Money is the consideration. Money is the consideration. But the law says not necessary money alone is consideration. It can be anything provided it has a value. Like barter system. Like barter system, you exchange goods, am I right? So consideration not necessary must be money. Consideration not necessary must be money. It can be anything provided it has a value. Provided it has a value. Not necessary consideration must be money. So that
Provided
means
what can be provided.
provided it has a value, value. Okay, so let's say now, yeah, let's say now I'm 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 giving this to somebody, but that person did not provide me any consideration. That person did not provide me any concession, no money or any goods. That here, if anything goes wrong with that mobile phone, that person cannot sue me because there is no consideration. There is no consideration. But there is an exception to that. I'll come back to that exception later. Yeah. Okay. So that means yeah, simply section 2, subsection D of Contract Act 1950 says Consideration means an exchange for a promise. An exchange for a promise. I'm giving something, I'm getting something in return. An exchange for a promise. That's what you mean by consideration. That is the definition given under section 2, subsection D of Contract Act. But there's one very, very old English case here. The name of the case is MISA, MISA versus Curie, CURIE. Yeah? So the definition under section 2, subsection D was taken from the definition from this case, MISA versus Curie, an exchange for a promise. Clear? Okay. Now I'll go a bit detail. Yeah. What are the rules? What are the rules which govern consideration? There are few rules which govern consideration. Yeah. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Listen. Yeah. This is an examinable area. Yeah. Listen. There are few rules which govern consideration. One of the rules which govern consideration is the first rule, and which is very, very important. Yeah. I'll go slow. Yeah. Please try to take down. Yeah. Con- okay. Consideration must be sufficient. Consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate. I repeat again here. Consideration must be sufficient. Consideration must be sufficient, but but not double T, yeah, one T, yeah, but need not be adequate. ADEQUATE. Consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate. What do you mean by this? Can anyone help me? Mr. Why Yong Wen Bin? Can you help me interpret what you mean by this rule? Consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate. Okay. Boleh atau tak boleh? Are you on the line, Yong Wen Bin? Young.
What is the meaning by need not be adequate?
Adequate. Okay. Now, yeah. Okay. Now, let me explain. Yeah. What do you mean? I give an example. Listen. Yeah. Hello. Examinable area. Yeah, John. Examinable area. Take down. Yeah. Consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate. Okay. Now, let's say. Yeah. I'm having two car. CAR. Dua kereta. Market value of both the cars are 300,000 today. Today is the 15th of October, right? 15th of October, right? The market value of the both cars are 300,000. One car, I'm selling it to A. One car, I'm selling it to A, and A is giving me 200,000. I've given the car, he has given me 200,000. But on the day of today's transaction, the market value of the car is 300,000. But I'm selling the car, he has given me 200,000. Another car, also market value 300,000. I've sold the car to B, and B has given me this mobile phone in return. Okay. Is this both agreement valid, or both not valid, or one valid and one invalid? Tell me. Can I know help me now?
I think it's one valid and one invalid.
Okay,
I
which is
think both valid because
so you are saying both are valid.
depends on the seller. If the depends on the seller. If the
Okay,
seller wants to accept the phone, then okay lah.
okay. So you are saying it depends on the seller. You are, as far as you are saying both are valid.
Yeah, if the
Okay,
seller agree lah.
okay. Any others? Any others has any different opinion? Hello. Cassandra. Is it Cassandra? Ada ke
Yeah,
Cassandra sini?
yeah.
Yes, Cassandra, tell me.
For me, I agree with the person before.
You agree with who?
I don't know.
You don't know which guy. Young Wen Bin. You agree with Young Wen
Yeah,
Bin? Both are valid. Both are valid.
Yeah, because it says
Hmm.
it need not to be adequate, right? So I think like it's very valid also.
Okay, any others? What about Shelley, class rep?
Um, I think the first one can, but not the second one, because it's too huge difference between the actual
Okay,
price. Yeah.
300,000. This mobile phone, 5,000, I think. Yeah, this one 5,000 ringgit. But the car is 300,000. So you're telling the first one 200,000, still 100,000 only less valid, but the second one not valid. Yeah. Okay, good. What about Janice?
Yeah, I agree with Yong Wenbin also, because if the car is selling for 300,000 worth it, if the seller is accept for even 1 ringgit or 2 ringgit, also can be valid as a consideration.
Okay, good. What about you, Jia? Jia, apa Jia punya answer, Jia? What about you, Jia? Which person? Okay, Joshua, Lenny, Joshua. What about you, Joshua? Hello, Joshua, you on the line? Okay, Shahira Akma. Hello, Shahira Akma, are you on the line?
Yes.
Hmm. So tell me, what's your opinion? Hmm?
Nothing.
Both valid or both not valid, or one valid, one valid, invalid? Hmm?
Not sure.
Both valid? Oh, not sure. Okay, any others? Any other? Okay, here is here. Now, before me explaining what's the situation here, you must know what is sufficient and what is adequate. Sufficient means enough, cukup. Sufficient means enough or cukup. Adequate means exact amount. Adequate means exact amount. But the law of consideration itself is saying consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate, not necessarily must be exact amount. I'm the seller. As far as I'm concerned, that 200,000 is enough. It's sufficient for me. Of course, it's valid. Going back to a second, 300,000 car. In return, getting this mobile phone. As far as I'm concerned, it has a value. Do this phone has a value? Hello, can you get anywhere free? Dapat free anywhere? Of course, no, isn't it? It has a value, right? Provided it's a value. Again, both of it are valid. Both of these agreement are valid.
So what you mean is as long as the seller agree, then the
Of
agreement
course,
is
the seller,
valid,
yes,
right?
of course. As far as I'm concerned, that phone is sufficient for me. Sufficient enough. I'm I'm happy with it. But is it an adequate amount? Of course. That car is 300,000. This mobile phone is also an adequate amount. Am I right? Because the law of consideration itself is saying consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate, not necessary, must be adequate amount. Willing buyer, willing seller, willing buyer, willing seller. Why should the court intervene? It's my car. It's my car. I'm selling it even for 1 ringgit. 1 ringgit has a value. Still a valid consideration. Am I right? If it's free, then it becomes a gift. Then there's no agreement. Clear?
Okay, okay, okay.
Hello? You see, there's one case here. The name of the case here, Chapel versus Nestle. Chapel versus Nestle. This case here, a very strange case, In this case here, the judge here went on to and explain here, even sweet wrappers, sweet wrappers, pembalut gula-gula, it has a value. The judge said, why? The judge went on to say here, some they collect sweet wrappers as a collective item, different sweet wrappers people like to collect and keep. Because those days I can remember people used to collect badges, stamps, and all the things. Right? Do they still have that habit? Yeah, people still collect coins, stamps, badges. Do they still nowadays generation? Do they still collect all these things? Ada ke tak ada? No more. Hello, collect any stamps,
No,
coins, all
Not
coins.
anymore lah, sir. Last time, yes lah.
Those days, my time, I used to collect all the different school badge. Those days, school badge, metal town. But nowadays, all in cloth thread, you just stick with the shirt. Those days, school, yeah, we have badges, metal, stick it. We used to collect different badges and we put it in our cap, all the badges. But nowadays, I think people, and even stamps, yeah, I think stamps still people collect it. So that's the first rule. Consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate. Not necessarily must be adequate amount. So here, very important, there should not be duress and there should not be undue influence. Duress comes under section 15 and undue influence comes under section 16. I've already explained to you all what is duress and what is undue influence. Am I right? Betul kan? What is duress? Syahira. Syahira, apa itu duress under section 15? Are you on the line? Shahira, are you on the line?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Tell me what is duress?
Wait, let me find my notes, please.
Duress means you're putting fear or threat or anything, right? So you're
Yeah.
getting not voluntarily, am I right? Under influence, under the influence for alcohol or drugs, am I right? Okay. Now I'll go back to the second rule. Okay. Only, listen carefully, very important, only the first rule. Consideration must be sufficient, but need not be adequate. Both the Malaysian law and the English law, the European law, and the American law is the same. Whereas the second rule says consideration, the second rule, says consideration not necessary must move from the promisee, but could move from third parties. I repeat again, a very important, The second rule says consideration not necessary must move from the promisee, but it could move from third parties. The Malaysian law says. Whereas the English law, the American law, and the European Union law says consideration must move from the promisee. Okay. Now, so
Teacher, can you repeat again? Sorry to interrupt you.
okay, the Malaysian law says you need to follow what the Malaysian law says. The Malaysian law says consideration not necessary must move from the promisee, promisee, but could move from third parties. But could move from third parties. That is what the Malaysian law says. Whereas the English law, the American law, and the European Union law says consideration must move from the promisee. Okay, now let me explain what you mean by this. We must know what the Malaysian law says. You will tell me later. Which is more practical? Is it the Malaysian law or the English law? Okay, now let's see. I I'm the promisor. I'm the promisor. I'm taking my car. I give you an example to explain what you mean by this. I'm sending my car to a car wash. I'm sending my car to a car wash, and I'm telling, okay, to wash, vacuum, and polish the car. The promisee, that is the owner of the car wash, is telling is 300 ringgit. Vacuum and polish the car is 300 ringgit. Okay, I'm the promisor and the person who's going to perform is the promisee. So I'm going to give 300 ringgit for the consideration which the promisee is going to provide. That is wash, vacuum, and polish the car. Okay, so what happened now? The promisee did not wash, vacuum, and polish the car, sending it to third party. Third party is doing washing, vacuum, and polishing the car and sending back to the promisee, and the promisee is claiming the 300 ringgit from me. Under the Malaysian law, here the consideration did not come from the promisee, but it came from third party. Am I right? But under the Malaysian law, as long as the job is done, I need to pay the money. Not necessary, the consideration must come from the promisee. It could come from anyone, provided the job is done. I still have to pay the 300 ringgit. That is what the Malaysian law says. Whereas the English law says, if the same situation would have taken place in London or in New York or in Paris, then I no need to pay the 300 ringgit because the consideration did not come from the promisee, but it came from third party. Because the agreement is between me and the promisee. The consideration must come from the promisee, but did not come from the promisee, but it came from third party. So I don't need to pay the 300 ringgit. So now you tell me which is the right law, yeah? Is it the English law is right uh, or the Malaysian law is right? What's your opinion on this?
I think it's English law.
Okay, you're saying English law. Okay, any others? Any others?
I
Shahira, what about you,
think
Shahira? Yes, you tell me.
I think is the Malaysia law because the promiser get what he need already.
Okay, all right. Okay, what about Joshua? Are you on the line, Joshua? Hello, Joshua, Joshua, Lenny.
I think
Hello.
the English
Yes,
law.
sir, yes, I'm here, I'm here.
Yeah, tell me which is the right law?
English, is it?
Huh? Huh?
English. Yeah.
England. Okay, what about you, Lao? Lao Chen? Lao Chen?
I think English because maybe have other purpose.
Okay. If you ask me, I would say the English law is right. Because if I'm entering an agreement with A must do the performance. Why should I pay to B when uh, uh, A did not do the job? If anything goes wrong, I will only sue A because as far as I'm concerned, the third party, I don't have any dealing with the third party. Why should I? True, isn't it? Because I'm going to cover A because the performance is good. That's the reason why I'm going to cover that covers. Why should I pay to where another person has done the job? Betul kan? But that's why in Malaysia, yeah, all the sub contractors, you don't know who's the main contractor now. Malaysia boleh. Everything is boleh in Malaysia. Okay. So of course the English law is right. Because if I'm entering to an agreement with somebody, I expect him to do the job. That's the reason why I'm entering to an agreement with him. Why should I pay to a third party where he did not do the job? Betul kan? Joshua, you have any other?
Yeah.
Huh?
Was that?
Yes, can you hear me? What your mic is problem or what, Joshua?
Can you hear me? Is it, sir?
I can hear you.
Or you don't want to hear me? Yeah.
Huh? But not clear.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Right. Okay. That's the second rule, yeah. The third rule. The third rule also different. The Malaysian law says past past consideration is a good consideration. The Malaysian law says past consideration is a good consideration. Whereas the English law, the American law, and the European Union law says past consideration is not a good consideration. What do you mean by this? Can anyone help me? Can anyone help me? What do you mean by past consideration is a good consideration? Example, I give you. I'll try to give an example and explain what do you mean by past consideration is a good consideration. Malaysian law says. Malaysian law says past consideration is a good consideration, whereas the English law, the American law, and the European law is telling past consideration is not a good consideration. I give you a situation here. I try to explain what you mean by this by an example. Yeah. Okay. I A have done a job for me. Let's say A has done a job for me 3 years ago. Supposed to be a voluntary job. A has done a job for me. Let's say painted my house, uh, the garden in the house, and done landscaping and all things. Supposed to be a voluntary job. That was the arrangement between both of us. He's supposed to do a voluntary job for me, all these things. Yeah. That job was done 3 years ago. 3 years ago, it's a past act, am I right? Because the job has already been completed, everything 3 years ago. Now, I'm telling to A, I will pay you 5,000 ringgit for doing the job 3 years ago. So I'm making a promise for a past act, am I right? Because he already completed the job 3 years ago. Supposed to be a voluntary job, but I'm promising him now, hey, I will pay you 5,000 ringgit for doing the job 3 years ago. Under the Malaysian law, if I did not pay him the 5,000 ringgit, he could sue me to recover the money. He could sue me to recover the 5,000. But under the English law, the American law, and the European law, he cannot sue me because you cannot make a promise for a past act. If I'm making a promise, there must be a fresh consideration coming in. So you cannot make a promise for a past act. If you're making a promise, there must be a fresh consideration for the promise. That is what the English law and the American law and the European Union law say. But the Malaysian law says the moment you promise, you need to honor it. If you never honor it, then you will be liable.
So, teacher,
But
what you
here I
mean?
feel yes. Yeah, tell me. So under the Malaysian law, I promise him that I will pay him 5,000 ringgit for doing the job 3 years ago, right? I've already make a promise to him now for a past act, am I right? If I didn't pay him the 5,000 ringgit, he could sue me to recover the 5,000 ringgit under the Malaysian law. Once I make a promise, I need to honor the promise. That is what the Malaysian law says. It can be a past act, but the moment I make a promise, I need to honor it. That is what the Malaysian law says. But the English law, the American law, and the British, European Union law saying you cannot make a promise for a past act. If you're making a promise, there must be a fresh consideration for that promise. But here I feel the Malaysian law is right. You know why? The moment you make a promise, you need to honor it. Am I right? Although the act is completed. Betul kan? What is it? Any comments?
Teacher, so what you mean is like the person already done the job 3 years ago.
Ah, supposed to be a voluntary job, but now I'm telling him, hey, I will pay you 5,000 ringgit for doing the job 3 years ago. I'm making a promise for a past act, am I right? If I
But
never pay him the
already
5,000
done.
ringgit, he could sue me.
But the
Yes,
job already
yes,
done.
Celine.
Then, I mean, is it the job already done?
The job already done 3 years ago. It's a past act, am I right? I'm
Why?
making a promise. I'm making a promise for a past act now. Now today I'm making a promise for a past act. Which the act has already been done 3 years ago. He painted the house. He has done the landscaping and all things. A past act, am I right? I'm making a promise for a past act now. If I never honor that promise, that person can sue me to recover the 5,000. That is what the Malaysian law is saying. Clear? Dapat Shirley?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Got it,
Okay.
yeah? Yes, Yong, when you have any question, Yong?
I understand.
Understand, yeah? All are clear? Hey, you want to take a small 5 minutes break?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I will just we'll just take a small break, yeah, and then we'll come back, yeah.